John, did you miss me?
We missed you. I mean, in the whole
function. Did anybody do this? No, no way.
And when I grew up,
I just made it. Oh, really? Oh, really?
Good afternoon. The public hearing for the City Planning Commission is now called to order. Please turn the sound off governing the procedures to be followed at public hearings. Before speaking, each person shall give their name, address, and state whom he or she is representing. Proponents for the proposal will speak for a period of 10 minutes. Each speaker shall be allowed a maximum of 2 minutes. Opponents or other interested parties will speak second for a period of 15 minutes. Each speaker shall be allowed a maximum of 2 minutes. Opponents will be allowed a period of 6 minutes for rebuttal. Each speaker shall be allowed a maximum of 2 minutes. Opponents will not be allowed to rebut. No material, written, photographs, maps, etc. will be accepted by the Commission or its staff at any time during the public hearing. This procedure shall be followed except at such time the presiding officer shall, with the approval of the Commission members present, extend such time. All proper parliamentary procedures shall be followed, including prevalence of argument, recognition of speaker, and absolute prohibition of applause. All comments made by the proponents and opponents shall be addressed to the chair or a specific member of the Commission. These hearings are recorded and broadcast on public access television. Audio tapes and other relevant public records are available in the City Planning Office and may be available on the city's website at www.noaa.gov. Old business, zoning docket 3118.
516 MCS zoning docket 5213, which amended an earlier conditional use ordinance to allow additional signage for commercial development, to modify waiver number 2 on 6 detached monument signs in total. The applicant requested that waiver of detached monument signs in total. Lot 1 in the 5th Municipal District, 100 to 4150 General de Gaulle Drive, and there's ordinance number 25516 MCS to allow for 3 detached monument signs per street frontage and a maximum of 7 detached monument signs in total. The applicant is proposing to install an additional detached monument sign along General de Gaulle Drive. This request necessitates a waiver of Article 24, Section 2412D, Table 24-2, which regulates freestanding signs in the C3 district. Staff analyzed the requested variance and found that the request does not meet the approval standards of Section 4.6.f. The applicant is requesting to provide more signage than is currently permitted by the CZO. Signage standards of the CZO are in place to ensure that certain businesses do not install excessive amounts of signage, which is what the applicant is requesting. In addition to diminishing the aesthetic quality of any particular site, excessive signage can negatively impact the overall character of the commercial corridor within which the site is located, because excessive signage at one site leads the owners of other properties to install or request for additional signage in order to compete. The signage competition ultimately leads to an excessive amount of signage throughout the corridor that harms the quality of the corridor. Therefore, staff recommends denial of zoning docket 3118.
Thank you. First speaker, Mark.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me here again. Can you hear me okay? Good afternoon. My name is Mark Hunter, and I represent the applicants and the property owner of this for the zoning change. I do want to be cognizant and respectful of the Planning Commission's time, because I recognize that this is yet again a full agenda. The full description of our position can be found in the zoning packet that's been provided to you. But I want to highlight a few key points from our position paper. Firstly, This site is 25 acres and more than 3 times the size of any nearby commercial development. And we feel that this warrants the consideration of additional signage along General de Gaulle. The second, due to the presence of the trees in the right-of-way along General de Gaulle, the signage is effectively non-readable, and this we have, per the Planning Commission last meeting, we requested from the City of New Orleans to possibly trim those trees or to remove them outright, and that request was denied. So we are left with the choice of putting signage before that tree line exists. Secondly, I wanted to address the signage war that was mentioned again, and each property owner has the ability to weigh the pros and cons of adding signage, and there are avenues for the Planning Commission to review each individual application and not just allow them outright if this signage is allowed. And my final point is that M3 Real Estate is committed to this community, and this is just a part of our overall marketing efforts to revitalize and strengthen the economic and the total Algiers community, and we hope that you will realize that, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker, Warren.
Hello, how are you? Thank you for having me, allowing me to speak. My name is Warren Surkoff, and I live in Jefferson Parish. I also own property in Orleans Parish. I handle the leasing for the Algiers.
Please state your address for the record, and also you've been seated time, so you can speak for a period of 4 minutes.
My address is 4704 Alphonse Drive, Metairie, Louisiana, 7006. I handle the leasing for the Algiers Plaza Market Shopping Center. I can tell you that I'm in support of their signage just because of the amount of uncertainty that is in the retail industry right now. I think it behooves the commission to consider allowing additional signage, because you should be trying to get better retailers and more retailers in the space, and not necessarily deterring them from coming into the space. If anybody knows the shopping center, before it was taken over by N3, it was Aurora. It was actually old. It was in a lot less kept. Since they ended up taking over, they ended up completely redoing the front facades of the majority of the back buildings, as well as what we call Building A. They've done a great job of actually getting some reputable companies, TJ Maxx and Ross, in there. And for its size, I can tell you that any retailer that we've actually had discussions with, they're going to want additional signage. And it's already so difficult to see some of these businesses that are on the interior of the building from General de Gaulle, which is really the busiest area. And, anybody who's actually going to be on the interior side, which is called the big boxes, are going to ask for signage over on General de Gaulle. In order for us to try and get more, big box stores or just general retailers in the space, the additional signage would actually help increase the visibility of the shopping center as a whole. I do believe that the commission should reconsider their stance, because we should be trying to get retailers in there, especially from owners like N3 who have been committed to trying to rebrand the shopping center by spending money and redoing the front facades, as well as incorporating new local companies to take over a social media and website platform for their organization. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Any other speakers here in support of this zoning docket matter? If not, we'll turn to the opponents. Is anyone here in opposition to this zoning docket matter? If not, the applicant will now have time for rebuttal. Nope. Here we go. If not, that closes up the public hearing portion. Commissioners?
both for the sake of discussion and because I tend never to want to overrule staff without serious reason, I'd like to make a motion that we support the staff recommendation and deny.
It's been moved by Commissioner Isaacson for accepting the staff report for denial, second by Commissioner Steve. Is there any other discussion on that motion? If not, I'm calling the question. All in favor of the motion, state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion is carried for denial. Subdivision docket 00518.
Subdivision docket 00518 is a request to re-subdivide lot 11A to lots 11A1, 11A2, and 11A3 on square 382 in a HMR3 Historic Marigny Tremay Bywater Residential District. Proposal would reconfigure the existing approximately 5,088 square foot lot into three lots, approximately 1,405 square feet with frontage on Henriette DeLille, one approximately 2,081 square feet corner lot fronting along Henriette DeLille and Columbus Streets, and one approximately 1,602 square feet with frontage along Columbus Street. Since the proposed subdivision involves proposing new lot lines that will separate buildings constructed prior to 1929, it is to be reviewed under Policy E, re-subdivision of properties developed prior to 1929. Proposal meets criteria C and E of Policy E. The proposal partially meets criterion A. The proposal does not meet criterion B and D of Policy E. The proposed re-subdivision will result in the separation of the two single-family structures that have historically sat together on existing lot 11A. If re-subdivision were approved, the two structures would each sit on separate lots. Proposed lots 11A1 and 11A3. However, in addition to the separation of the two principal buildings, the proposed re-subdivision would also result in the creation of a new vacant lot, lot 11A2. Policy E was not intended to allow for the creation of new vacant lots, and the existing vacant space could be developed while remaining part of proposed lot 11A1 or 11A3. The applicant, Providence Community Housing, has stated that it intends to construct affordable housing on the proposed lot, which must be on a separate lot from the existing units due to the funding mechanisms being employed. Therefore, the applicant is requesting approval of the proposed lot layout. Proposed lot 11A1 would be insufficient with the lot area, lot width, and rear yard requirements of the HMR3 district, and 11A3 would be insufficient with the lot area and rear yard requirements, while 11A2 would be fully compliant. These deficiencies are a result of the decision to create lot 11A2 then rather than incorporate it into the other lots. Therefore, the staff recommends denial of subdivision docket 00518.
Thank you. Rachel Bland.
Hi, my name is Rachel Bland. I work for Providence Community Housing, and just want to request a deferral to the April 24th meeting that we talked about.
Why?
We'd like to submit more documentation about what we plan to do and the funding mechanism for the affordable housing.
Can I ask the question of staff? Is there, would delay or postponement, would that give you a chance to see things that could change this in any way?
I don't think it's likely that we will change our recommendation because the funding mechanisms being employed aren't really relevant to what the review is. This is a request by the applicant, and we have no objection to deferring it, but I don't know that it's going to change the staff recommendation.
Also, the CEO is out of town. She'll be in town April 24th. And when we submitted our original application, just because of the way that we had to change it, schedules didn't line up, so it's just a flux, I guess, on our part. She would really like to be here to talk.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in support of subdivision docket? Is there any opposition to the subdivision docket? That closes the public hearing portion for this docket matter. Commissioners?
I'll move for the deferral, even though we've heard that at least so far what the applicant was going to come back with wasn't really relevant to the staff's decision. I think still it's we're within our time period and there's no harm, and it's a benefit to at least allow the applicant a full opportunity to present their case. So I'll move for deferral for was it 2 meetings?
April 24th.
Yes, 2 meetings, April 24th.
I'll second. Yes, for the same reason. Just we've generally allowed at the applicant's request some flexibility. So.
I'll go ahead and support the deferral, but I would, at least from my own just single perspective, let the word go back that unless you have new information that's going to overcome the staff recommendation, I'm going to vote with staff recommendations on such matters. So maybe more than just financing would be welcome. I don't obviously speak for all the commissioners, but it's a pretty high bar to overcome the staff recommendation on a pretty clear-cut thing like this. So even with the deferral, if all you're going to do is come back and show us more financing, it's certainly not going to, and that doesn't change the staff recommendation. It means I don't think you won't get my support, and probably the others.
It's been moved by Commissioner Steve, second by Commissioner Brown, for deferral for April 24th. Is there any other discussion on the motion? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion is carried for deferral. Zoning docket 3818.
Zoning docket 3818 is a request for a conditional use to permit an established multifamily dwelling in an H2 RD2 historic urban two-family residential district. The petition property is located on square 877 lots X and Y in the 3rd Municipal District, bounded by North Roman Street, Music Street, Arch Street, and North Clear Street. The municipal address is 2453 North Roman Street. The applicant is proposing to reestablish a 3-unit multifamily dwelling that was renovated after Hurricane Katrina and was occupied until at least 2010, according to the applicant. Although the Sanborn maps show the structure as being comprised of 2 residential units, there have been 3 utility meters associated with this property since at least 2007, and the assessor classifies the structure as a triplex. Additionally, the physical character of the existing building supports the proposed 3 units, as it was clearly used as a multifamily dwelling in the past. As a result, the proposal meets all 3 criteria and the use standards for granting a conditional use for an established multifamily dwelling. In addition, the request is consistent with the master plan and meets the applicable conditional use approval criteria. Therefore, the staff recommends approval of zoning docket 3818 subject to 4 provisos.
Thank you. Nicole Weber.
Thank you. Just here for information purposes to represent my client. Just wanted to note that there is a roof on that building. That's the way it looked when we purchased it. So thank you.
What docket number is this? I'm sorry.
3818. Are there any other speakers in support of the zoning document? Are there any opponents for the zoning document? If not, that closes the public hearing portion for this zoning document. Commissioners?
Move to accept staff's recommendation for the reasons stated in the report.
It's been moved by Commissioner Brown, second by Commissioner Steve, to accept staff report for approval for the zoning document. Is there any discussion on that motion? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion is carried. Zoning docket 3918.
Zoning docket
Zoning docket 03918 is a request for conditional use to allow a fast food restaurant, more specifically a Subway, in a historic urban neighborhood business district, a character preservation corridor design overlay district, and the Magazine Street use restriction overlay district. The petition property is located at 4639 Magazine Street. The restaurant will occupy approximately 1,578 square feet of vacant space in an existing strip mall composed of 4 lease spaces in a single one-story building that the applicant proposes to renovate interior only for accommodating the restaurant. It should be noted that this application was advertised as an amendment to an existing conditional use ordinance which approved a 1,000 square foot Pizza Hut at this same location in 1994. That fast food restaurant is no longer operating, and we're told that it never really became operational. In the course of staff discussions with the applicant decided that it would like the existing ordinance to be rescinded, so this application will result in the rescission of an existing conditional use ordinance and its replacement with a new one rather than just the amendment of the old one. Staff recommends approval of zoning docket 039-18 subject to 5 provisos listed, one of which involves the rescission of that old ordinance previously mentioned. The reason for the recommendation is proposed use is consistent with the master plan and the intent of the HUB1 zoning district. The HUB1 district permits restaurants of this type, and any potential adverse impacts upon surrounding vicinity are generally mitigated by existing regulations and further ensured by the provisos recommended. Given Magazine Street's historic and current profile as a commercial corridor, the proposed restaurant is an appropriate use provided that it is developed in accordance with all applicable regulations and these provisos.
Thank you so much. I didn't receive any cards from the applicant or in support for this zoning document, so if the applicant is here, you can speak at this time. Is the applicant or anyone in support for this zoning document present? If not, we'll move to the opposition. Betsy Stout.
I'm Betsy Stout, 619 Nashville Avenue. I'm speaking as a resident who lives close to Magazine Street and also on behalf of Louisiana Landmark Society. Fast food chains destroy the economics of Magazine Street. National chains pay higher rents, which is great for the landlord, but it's deadly for the local businesses that are pushed out because they can't afford those rents. Magazine Street is an incubator of small businesses where our residents offer unique products and foods to a national audience of tourists. These businesses depend on the tourist trade as much as if they were in the French Quarter. For these reasons, Louisiana Landmark Society asks you to deny fast food chains on Magazine Street. Speaking as a real estate agent, I'm with Hill Riddle Jr. and Associates. I can attest that Magazine Street is the gateway to our city, and it's the main reason that tourists venture outside the French Quarter. They often walk all the way down from downtown to see and to spend money at our enchanting businesses and restaurants they've heard about. Sometimes it plants a seed in them to move here. Nothing kills this ambience faster than a national fast food chain restaurant, but the principle also applies to chain retail stores as well. At the moment, the vast majority of my clients would like to live within walking distance to Magazine Street. A Subway and the precedent it sets changes Magazine Street from the street of dreams to Veterans Highway. Please deny this use. And one more thing, I don't doubt that Mr. Glazier is having trouble finding other tenants because this strip mall is an eyesore. It is not like the rest of Magazine Street. He needs either to renovate it or sell it. And I'd like to know, is anyone here to read a letter from Boulogne Improvement Association?
Thank you, Ms. Stout. That concludes your time.
And we're here, and we just walked in,
Next.
unfortunately.
Next.
In support.
Next speaker is Sam Landry.
Hello, I'm Sam Landry. I live at 4526 Camp Street. It's basically a block from the site. I concur in large part with what was just said. I would very much like to see a unique, maybe boutique style sort of restaurant appear at that site. I'm certainly not opposed to businesses in general. We give a lot of business to La Boulangerie and Crescent City Automotive and the flower shop. So many of these businesses are unique and welcome residents, but I don't find anything particularly attractive about a Subway, and so I would be pleased to see something else come to that site. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, John Bucari.
My name is John Pecorare, 818 Jenna Street, 2 blocks away from where the restaurant is going to be. So I represent me and my mother, 94-year-old mother. We live on Jenna Street, right between Magazine and Constance. And essentially, I really don't think a Subway belongs right there, or belongs on Magazine Street. They have a precedent, really. Seems like very few chain restaurants on Magazine Street, and I just think it would be would enhance the area. It'd be setting. I think the next thing that's going to happen is those places down the block will become Burger Kings and McDonald's. You know, it'll be a bad. I think it'll be a bad precedent for this, and I agree with everything else that was said. So, thank you very much, and that's about it.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak in opposition for this zoning document? Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Bruce Crutcher, and I live at 4639 Camp Street. I'm here on behalf of the Boulogne Improvement Association, which is going to be affected by this. At our last meeting, we voted against the chain restaurant application, and I'm just going to read a short bit of the letter that we submitted earlier today to this board. At the board meeting of the Boulogne Association on February 28th, this request was discussed, and our board adopted the position that it does not support chain restaurants on Magazine, as they're incompatible with the character and historic neighborhood. Therefore, the Boulogne Improvement Association hereby requests that Glazer Brothers be denied a conditional use to permit a Subway sandwich shop. And that was submitted and the letter was submitted earlier today. That's all.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else here to speak in opposition for this zoning document? If not, I believe the applicant.
Before we go to the applicants, just to be clear, since it seems that the theme of the opposition here is to a specific tenant rather than the fast food aspect of this, could I get counsel to tell us about prohibition of, say, formula retail or chain type, and if there's any such prohibition other than it being part of this conditional use, that we know who the tenant is.
Currently, there are no formula retail prohibitions anywhere in the city, particularly on Magazine Street. So accordingly, you just look at the general use, not the specific type of use that falls within the general category. If fast food's appropriate, fast food's appropriate.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Lynette Gordon, and I am the architect for Subway. I'm located at 2439 Manhattan Boulevard, Suite 209 in Harbor, Louisiana. And I just wanted to come today just to, first of all, just let it be known that Subway is the tenant and Dr. Glacier is the owner of the building. One of our main concerns when, first of all, I just want to say that Subway was located further up on Magazine, but when Walgreens purchased the project, they lost their site. So they were in the process of looking for another site on Magazine, which happens to be at this location that they found. One of the main things that we were trying to do to become good neighbors in the community, we met with the community because we really wanted to try to propose to Dr. Glacier to do a facelift of the building. That was our main goal, and that is still our goal. But because Subway is only a portion, our renovations on the exterior only apply just to that Subway location. So in the prior meeting with city planning, we just decided to not do any exterior renovations at all. So right now we come before you to, to ask you to sincerely look at this being Subway. They are concerned about, the fast food aspect of the project, but there is no drive-through. The hours are going to be reasonable hours that we're willing to work out with the community, and it's going to be upgraded to the new state-of-art Subway interior decor. So we want to do whatever we could do to help influence our owner to renovate the exterior, but at this point, this is all we have to offer.
Thank you.
And I'm available if you have any questions.
Any questions from the commissioners? Commissioner, you want to add anything else to that, or?
That's all. If you have any questions, I'm available. But we're trying our best to be good neighbors, and this is one of the only locations that was available that we could find that would suit our interior build out.
Thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner Isaacson.
Yeah, I have a motion. I move that we deny the application despite staff recommendation, and that fast food restaurants are not something that are helpful to a historic urban neighborhood district, and so I'd like to propose that we deny.
It's been moved by Commissioner Isaacson for now for this zoning document, second by Commissioner Brown. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Yes.
Commissioner Hughes.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I definitely respect Commissioner Isaacson. I am inclined to vote against the motion on the floor for the following reasons. First of all, the concerns raised by the residents of this neighborhood weigh very heavily on me, and I've taken that into consideration. But as I think about Magazine Street in totality, and in listening to the arguments today, it's really centered around chain restaurants. And I mean, there's Starbucks, there's CC's, and even though those are considered coffee houses, they serve sandwiches, they serve soft drinks, they serve water, they serve a wide variety of things. And so for me, I put that in a chain fast food restaurant category. There's also an Izzo's, a legal burrito. If I'm not mistaken, that's hardly a sit-down restaurant. I don't equate that to Coquette or Lillette. It's a fast food type establishment. You can sit down to vote against the motion on the floor.
Thank you, Commissioner Hughes. Commissioner.
Somebody else, our decision is fast food or not. And so if it were another guy's poor boy, if we would be inclined to vote for that, then I think we have to also be inclined to vote for Subway. Otherwise, we're carving out fast food in some special category to say no to. And I'm sorry, we're carving out chains as a category to say no to. Whereas I think we're not allowed to look at it that way. We have to look at the use, as council has told us. And so a sandwich shop seems like an appropriate use to me. And so I'm not inclined to say because it's Subway, the answer is no, but if it were Guy's Poor Boy, the answer would be yes. So I'm opposed to the motion.
Commissioner Brown?
I'm supporting the motion not because it's a subway. I'm supporting the motion because it is denying conditional use for fast food, which I think the neighbors spoke clearly on. Naming Subway, I wanted to make sure that I was not considering that as the sole reason for opposing it. But this is clearly something the neighbors don't want, whether it's a Subway or whether it's another even locally owned fast food, although it tends to be fast foods or chains, so the definition does not need to be defined or confined to that. But we have a reason for that conditional use has come before us.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. I'll also share the same sentiments as Commissioner Hughes and Commissioner Steve. I've actually lived on on Constant Street for about 15 years. And I always walk to like Mahoney's or any other Subway or sandwich shop, particularly. And I think this issue is necessarily about the fast food. So I'll be voting against the motion as well. Commissioner Isaacson?
I'll see if the others.
Yes, I will also be voting against the measure. That site was probably one of the, as a little girl growing up in that neighborhood, that was the site of a shoe town. So it was a national chain, I think, when originally constructed. So the fact that it's a national chain on Magazine Street, I mean, that's what that site was.
I mean, I've pulled up a restaurant across the street that serves turkey, avocado, basil mayo, regular tomato, and 6-grain bread. That sounds fast food to me. So I think it's consistent with what's going on the street. I'm going to vote against the motion.
I have a question. So I want to make sure I understand this, that fast food restaurants are allowed as a conditional use in HUB1, and the grounds for determining that would be, if you feel a clarification of ground for determining.
The grounds for approving or denying conditional use are contained in Article 4 of the CZO, and they're standard for all conditional use requests regardless of type. And the CPC report goes through each one, and then the staff believes that the factors were met, but the commission ultimately will decide.
Okay, then I would ask Mr. Brown, would you repeat what you said then about why you feel like this conditional use is different?
Yeah, fast foods come before us a lot, and generally I listen to neighbors as to whether they want that in their neighborhood, because that is the reason that it's required the extra step and scrutiny at our level. Staff did an excellent job, as they always do, on addressing the article in the CZO. However, the neighbors spoke to me, so that.
Okay.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I understand it's a close call, but this isn't Subway, not Subway, or whatever. This is us using our discretion to give a conditional use based on whether it would be good for the neighborhood according to certain provisions for a historic neighborhood. The neighbors don't want a fast food restaurant there. I am not thinking fast food restaurants generally enhance Magazine Street. I know there are many. I know there probably will be many. But if people come for a conditional use and the neighbors don't want it, I don't think it improves the neighborhood. And I think that's why we do have, historic urban neighborhood districts, and why we have a conditional use. And I'm against the conditional use, whether or not they put avocado on the sandwich or not.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from the other commissioners? If not, I'll call the question. I'll ask commissioners to actually vote by raising hands. So if you're in support of the motion, please raise your hand.
Which is to deny, yeah.
For denial. 3. And if you're voting against the motion for denial, please raise your hand. It's 5-3, so the motion is denied. Is there
Chairman,
Commissioner Hughes?
I would like to move staff's recommendation.
It's been moved and seconded for approval of the zoning docket matter. Is there any questions or comments on the motion? If not, I'll call the question. Those supporting the motion, please raise your hands. 5. And if you're voting against the motion for approval, please raise your hand. 3. 5-3, the motion is carried for approval. Zoning docket 1418.
Zoning docket 040-18 is a request by Ray Avenue Baptist Church for a zoning change from an SRD suburban two-family residential district to a C2 auto-oriented commercial district on Square 10, lots 3 through 10, Haydell Heights subdivision in the 3rd Municipal District, bounded by Ray Avenue, Interstate 10, Drew Avenue, and Prentice Avenue. The municipal addresses are 4708 through 4726 Ray Avenue. The subject properties are located in a residential area in New Orleans East. The site is currently developed and is the location of Ray Avenue Baptist Church. The church owns 8 contiguous lots, which include the church structure and adjacent paved parking lot to the south of the church. The applicant proposes to rezone the petition properties to C2 auto-oriented commercial district. According to the NPP documents supplied by the applicant, the purpose of the rezoning request is to erect a billboard on the site that would be visible to the abutting Interstate Highway 10. Billboards are not permitted in the existing SRD district, but are permitted in the proposed C2 district. The neighborhood is residential in nature with no commercial activity in the immediate area for several blocks. The proposed rezoning to C2 would allow many uses that are incompatible with the residential nature of the area, and this commercial activity would create negative impacts regarding traffic, noise, and incompatible uses. The proposal is not consistent with the plan for the 21st century, the master plan. The master plan designates the future land use of the petition site as residential post-war low density, one of the most restrictive FLUM designations, and commercial uses do not comply with the intent of this designation. The request is also considered a spot zone, as it does not meet all the criteria of the historic non-conforming use policy. There are no properties in the vicinity of the subject property that are zoned C2 auto-oriented commercial district. Because the application singles out the subject site for treatment that is different from the neighboring lots that are also residentially zoned and are also designated by the master plan for residential future land use, the staff believes that the application should be viewed as a spot zone. The proposed C2 auto-oriented commercial district would greatly expand potential permitted and conditional uses at the petition properties. Many of these potential uses could have a negative impact on the character of the existing residential neighborhood, and the request does not meet all of the standards for approval set forth in Article 4 of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance. For these reasons, the staff recommends denial of zoning docket 040-18.
Thank you. First speaker, Reverend Robert Brown.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Reverend Robert Brown. I'm the pastor of Ray Avenue Baptist Church at 4712 Ray Avenue. In relation to this particular venture today, if possible, we would like to ask for a deferment because we would like to further engage our community in this endeavor in relation to what we're trying to do. Ray Avenue have been around for some 65 years, as you could possibly tell. I hope I don't look like I'm 65, but some people may consider that. But we have been serving this community, and basically the reason that we applied for this thing is to help us to enhance the things that we as a ministry are looking to do for this community. So therefore we would ask for a deferment to give us some more time to engage our community.
Reverend Brown, your request for a deferral, what meeting, how long would you like the deferral to be?
2 weeks if possible. It's not long. We call a meeting, it's just some things we were doing and we would like to engage them further.
Okay. As a point of procedural we have, if anyone signs up to actually speak on this zoning document, we actually have to hear, even though that you're requesting a deferral now.
Yes,
So we have at least 3 people that signed up in opposition.
Yes, sir.
So the applicant is requesting a deferral. So if Ms. Linda Williams, Ms. Sylvia McKenzie, and Ms. Gladys Bowman wishes not to speak, well, then we could necessarily kind of hear for a deferral. If not, you can use the remaining of your time as far as in support of your actual argument to get your zoning docket. If they want to speak,
yeah,
well, then we actually have to hear them.
I understand that. Okay.
Even though you're requesting a deferral.
Right.
So you can use your remaining time to actually speak in support of your zoning docket matter.
Okay. We've been serving this community, and sometime because the way the community is structured, our ministry, it creates a problem for the neighborhood with parking. People park all over the place. I'm excited about that, and we do need more parking. We just don't have the funding for it. But this project will actually help us to actually get the funding that we need to provide more parking so that people could park in a parking lot and not in front of people, residents, causing problems for them of that nature and capacity. As you guys know, or may not know, we are a church. We are actually a spiritual organization, and a major part of what we do is that we pray and we ask God for help. The people that's actually helping us with this venture that's going to be providing the billboard, we actually believe that they came to us, we engaged them as a result of that nature, and it's just going to help us to solve a whole lot of problems that is needed in that community besides parking, and helping us to by being rezoned to help us to provide some of the other things that we're planning to do to enhance that community as a whole.
Thank you. That ends your time. Mr. Johnny Jackson III.
My name is John Jackson, 201 Kent Avenue, Metairie, Louisiana. I started a billboard company a little over 20 years ago, and I own Pelican Outdoor Advertising, so we're the only majorly locally owned and operated billboard company in New Orleans. I've been doing this for quite some time. So when I look at a piece of property, to me it's about the smell test, and does it look like a billboard would go on that property? I mean, I know there are bigger issues here, and those issues are the church and what the billboard will provide for the church financially, and also in free advertising. To us, that's a big deal, because the church wants to do more for the community, but all this takes dollars. I mean, that's just the real world nature of how the world turns. So if you look at that property, the church, where that building is, facing the church owns the property on the right. And I know Pastor Brian and I, we've talked about that property, and the funding with the billboard is going to help establish a parking lot where that property is. So when all of the when the surrounding community and the congregation shows up, they'll have ample places to park. And it's been our policy for over 20 years. And in this location, we're not going to advertise alcohol and other things, and that's in contract form. So if anybody has any questions for me, I'm here to answer them.
Thank you. Is there anyone else to speak in support? If not, we'll hear from the opposition. Linda Williams.
Good evening. My name is Linda Williams. My address is 4754 Adele Street, New Orleans, Louisiana 70126. I'm against it because even though the church has been in the neighborhood for quite some time, it has 3 opposition that's on the paper, which we had a meeting September the 22nd, 2017 at 6 p.m. And it was stated about the sign. But on this opposition I have, it has a building, a larger church, parking lots, business, And I'm unclear of really what pastor wants to do. And it's not have been fair to the neighborhood at all. I'm sorry to say it. I love the pastor of the Ray Avenue Baptist Church, but he hasn't been quite fair to us as a neighborhood. We didn't know half of what he wanted to do, and as a billboard, it would bring money in. It would bring money into his church, not the neighborhood. And I also have a diagram where it would impact the neighborhood, even though if you have funerals, it impacts the neighborhood. We have signed petitions, and all of the people that stay right by the right of it don't want it. To the left of it don't want it. It's just out there, I don't know what you want, because on this it says that we will build a larger church. And if the billboard brings in money, it would be a larger church. It would still not communicate with the neighborhood. We have 5 churches in the neighborhood. Other pastors agreed with the neighborhood to do something for the neighborhood. Pastor Brown used to have little fellowships and stuff for the neighborhood, but it wasn't clear of the announcement to go out through the neighborhoods. He would do it with some announcement, but not all to the neighborhood. When you do something for the neighborhood, it should be that every homeowner knows what's going on.
Thank you, Ms. Williams.
Thank you.
Next speaker in opposition, Sylvia McKenzie.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sylvia McKenzie, and I live right next door at 4700 Ray Avenue. The house with the different color top. And it was a Presbyterian church that I found through the news on St. Charles that helped us to patch that. As Linda said, we love Pastor Brown. I grew up with Pastor Brown in the area. He may be about 3-4 years older than me, but we all grew up together. So when we had the meeting in September, as I told him outside of his church, you have to be for the people. If you for the right, I don't mind supporting you. But my mother will be 86 years old this year. Her property was not respected a little while ago when we had some street fixture. And him, his secretary, and another guy that works for him ran across my mother's lawn. And when I happened to witness the guy in the white truck going across the lawn, he had all the other green spots to go around. Why did you roll over her lawn? You're not respecting this. When we came after Katrina, we helped him the phone. My mom, when we had the trailers, we caught him stealing our electricity. She forgave him for that. He stole our white hose that may still be on the side of the church. She let him keep that.
Ms. McKenzie.
Wait, I just want to get the relevance of why I'm opposing now.
Okay.
I'm asking that and speaking for all the seniors in my area that could not be here. I do not mind supporting him if he's for the right. And if he know, I told him this myself. If you for the righteous, I'm with you. But you're not helping the community at all. So that's why my opposition is there, and I'm asking that the deferment is fine. But make sure Rosedale is included. They leave. They don't live back there. We live back there. And we trying to do something for ourselves outside of his church and other churches that's not helping us.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Next speaker, Gladys Bowman.
My name is Gladys Bowman. I live at 4804 Ray Avenue, but I have property in the mailboxes down and damage to property on the ground. So I'm not for increasing. Yes, I'm not against the parking lot. Yes, I do believe the church need funding. I'm an officer in another church, so I know how it is with funding, but as he said, God will provide. So I'm praying that they will get it what they need for the parking lot, but not to change the zoning. I would really like for it to stay a community, a neighborhood, family-oriented neighborhood. If you don't mind, please do not change the zoning. I was born and raised there. I was born on Ray Avenue. I still live on Ray Avenue. It don't only impact the 4700 block, it also impact the 4600 block and also the 4800 block, because when they have the funerals in the wedding, they need space. We live in a community. I don't think Pastor Brown lives there, members of the church does not live there, and certainly the man that is asking for the sign to be put there don't live there. We have to live there and we experience the crowdedness. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any other speakers to speak in opposition for this zoning document? There. If you'd like to speak, you can come at this time.
Just read it. She said she didn't want to speak. She just was opposed.
Miss Elsie Nelson.
She coming.
Ms. Nelson, can you state your address for us and your name, please?
4750 Overy Avenue. And the church is a little off from my house. They have 2 empty lots between me and the church. And I'm really not satisfied with that because most of the time I'm alone by myself. So I'm not satisfied with changing the zone.
Thank you. And one more speaker called Angela. Okay, is there anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? If not, Pastor Wayne, you have time for rebuttal. 2 minutes.
Can I ask a question before? There's a text amendment for the council that I don't think we've voted on yet about the conversion of billboards into the animated. Would this be eligible for conversion, this area? If that were to go through?
So that particular motion is for converting existing billboard locations that are not digital to digital.
Right.
So that particular one wouldn't apply. I do believe, however, that they would be eligible for a new digital billboard in this location if they were able to go.
Okay.
And if this is deferred, I can verify that. But the proposal that's before us is only to, if there's an existing billboard in place.
But with the trade of that sort of that would be the part of the cap and trade would be that they would have to give up 5 if they were to do that or not.
That's what has been proposed.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Can I also ask a question? The auto-oriented commercial district, that opens this up for things other than just this billboard, correct?
Correct.
I have one more question.
Just to follow up, there's a list in the staff report of the particular uses that would be permitted by right.
And then my question is kind of in the same vein. Is there nothing short of changing the zoning to the C2 auto-oriented commercial district to get a billboard? Is there nothing, there are no other measures they could follow to ask for permission to have a billboard short of a zoning all the way to auto-oriented commercial?
The CZO specifies, I think, only 2 zoning districts that allow billboards. This is one of them.
As a matter of permitted use.
Right.
And
subject to all other things.
And what about as a conditional use or any other?
They're either permitted or prohibited. So this is the lowest intensity of the zoning districts that allow them as permitted uses. They're prohibited in most other districts.
Reverend Brown, you have 2 minutes for rebuttal.
Hopefully I won't be a minute. First, I just want to thank members of the community that did come out to express their concern, and I really feel honored that all of them expressed the fact of how much they do love me, and I love them as well. As a matter of fact, the one that lives right next to the church, they use our parking lot all the time. We let them park there. We don't try to run them out the parking lot at all. They use it. They use it. Their family members use it if they need it. But the point, just asking for the deferment to actually to engage the community more in what this is, how this is going to benefit. Because I want them to know. I heard their hearts cry today, the concern and the major concern, because the parking, it is a problem, but people want to come to church there for whatever reason. I would love to hope it was because of me, but it's just that I believe it's because of that church and what it can actually, what it has provided and longs to provide for that community. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Reverend Brown. Then now closes the public hearing portion for the zoning document. The applicant has requested a deferral to the April 10th, 2018 meeting. Is there any motion or any discussion by any commissioner?
I'll go ahead and make a motion. When I look at what this, I appreciate that the applicant wants a deferral. I'm going to make a different motion. And that is based on what the C2 already oriented commercial district does. Even if I was inclined to agree on a billboard, the idea that this runs all the way through amusement facilities, hotels, financial institutions, motor vehicle repair, packaged alcohol beverage, live entertainment, car dealership, this expands what could happen in that residential envelope far beyond putting a billboard in. So I am going to make a motion to support staff recommendation.
It's been moved by Commissioner Weaver to accept staff report for denial, second by Commissioner Steig. Is there any further discussion on the motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I certainly respect Commissioner Weaver and appreciate his motion. The reason I'm going to oppose the motion is because of what we did 30 minutes ago on subdivision docket 0518, and the argument that was made for us deferring was that generally when an applicant comes and requests a deferral, it's no harm, no foul, and in the spirit of Commissioner Isaacson's comments, obviously the applicant, in this case Pastor Brown, will have a very high bar to meet should we grant the deferral and if he has the opportunity to come back. What I strive to be on this commission is fair and consistent, and for the sake of consistency, that's my purpose only of opposing the motion. I live in this community, I was born in this community, raised in this community, I'm still in this community, so I certainly understand and appreciate the concerns of the residents, but for the sake of consistency, I'm going to oppose the motion.
Commissioner Hughes makes a point that we did exactly the same thing earlier in this meeting, and I'm inclined to agree with him. So I would like to withdraw my motion.
Well, I'm not sure we did do the exact same thing,
Right,
because the other applicant wanted to present more information. Also, the person who was going to present was not available today. So just get that out there. And I'm not saying you need to change your mind, but just.
So Commissioner Weaver, you have withdrawn your motion?
I'm requesting to withdraw my motion.
Okay.
Can I make his motion?
I'll second it.
And the reason being is the time prior, there was no opposition. We have opposition here who have taken the time out of their schedule to make them come back with no additional information other than just additional engagement. I think that does a disservice to the people who participated.
I'll second, and I also would like to say that, while I did support the deferral on the previous matter, it was entirely because there was a person here who was not available, and generally we allow flexibility. But I'm not sure engagement with the community here will at all cure the fact that this goes against our own master plan policy, and it's a spot zone, and the intensity of the use goes well beyond a billboard. Even if it were just a billboard, it has the opportunity then, if the council is successful in its text amendment, it could also be more than just a regular billboard. It can be something that's quite intense as a billboard use.
So the motion is to deny.
So to change the,
Call the question. Next, commissioners to vote by hand. Zoning docket 4118.
The next item is zoning docket 4118 for a property located at 4877 Laurel Street, bounded by Laurel, Upper Line, Constance, and Lime Streets. This is a request for a conditional use permit, a standard restaurant in an HUB1A historic urban neighborhood business district. The subject property is also within the HUB1A use restriction overlay district, which requires new standard restaurants to receive conditional use approval. The applicant operates a coffee shop on the ground floor of an existing mixed-use structure and is proposing to change the use of the specialty restaurant into a standard restaurant. The applicant is not proposing any interior or exterior modifications related to the change of use. The staff does not believe that a standard restaurant and its associated uses will negatively affect the surrounding uses because it serves a neighborhood need, is consistent with the master plan, and meets the conditional use approval standards. Therefore, the staff recommends approval of zoning docket 4118, subject to 8 standard provisos related to operational and permitting requirements.
Thank you. First speaker, Lauren.
Hello, my name is Lauren Fink. I've been authorized to speak on behalf of 4877 LLC. My personal address is 2210 Camp Street. I'm also the owner of Cherry Espresso Bar, where the location is a commercial location. I'm here to provide any additional information, and I also wanted to raise the point of the proviso regarding the sidewalk change. This is the historical building. It's an old firehouse, and the owner has made an effort to preserve that historical aspect. And I feel like one of those reasons is the driveway leading up to the door. It makes it identifiable as a firehouse. It's not usable. There's not enough depth to actually park there, and I've never seen anyone park there. So it shouldn't violate the curb cut policy. Thank you.
It's proviso number 5. And that was brought up at the PAC meeting because the current use does not use the driveway, so the Department of Public Works requires them to restore the public sidewalk for its current use.
Thank you.
Does it inhibit in any way, access? Or, I mean, is it?
So they're
what
really.
What is the purpose of that?
Public room. So there are really 2 issues. One is just in general, DPW wants unused curb cuts to be restored so that it's clear that that is in fact street parking. If you're parking, you may or may not know if you're going to get a ticket there. The other issue is ensuring compliance with ADA requirements. Because of the slope of it, sidewalks are allowed to have a really minimal slope, so if you're going through a wheelchair, you're not at this weird grade change. And so the other part is making sure that the sidewalk does in fact meet ADA requirements in a way that your typical driveway, which has a relatively severe slope, does not.
Is there a reason DPW didn't require that at the time of the occupancy permit for that building when they renovated it recently?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm speculating that what happens is specific conditional use applications are brought before the Plan and Advisory Committee, and so there's a representative DPW is viewing all of those. When this was renovated and kind of repurposed for commercial use the first time around, it didn't go to PAC because it doesn't trigger that requirement. So it goes through the standard permitting process. In the course of the standard permitting process, you know, there may have been no one looking to check that sidewalks were upgraded and so on and so forth.
Thank you. Next speaker, Tom.
My name is Tom Fouts. My address is 537 Joseph Street in New Orleans. I live about 10 blocks away. I probably frequent, along with my wife, Cherry Coffee every day. In fact, I think that's my car that's in the picture in the front. I'm here to support Lauren's and the owner's request for the conditional use. I think the neighborhood can definitely use an additional place where people can get a meal at a standard restaurant. I'm here to also vouch for Lauren's character. She has just been a terrific steward. She's the kind of entrepreneur that the city has wanted. She came here post-Katrina, and I think all of those people who frequent Cherry would say that Lauren has just really been so respectful of the neighborhood. I know that we don't have, there's not a neighborhood association in this area. That said, I think Wisner Park, which is across the street, has an organization. The president was supposed to come today and speak in support. He's not here. I will represent to you. I have spoken to him personally, and they are in favor of the conditional use. Lastly, I agree with Lauren about the proviso. If you go there, the look fits with that old ramp that led up to where the fire engines went through the entrance. And I'm not sure why the city, I understand the curb cut. I'm opposed to curb cuts. I've opposed curb cuts on my street. So I get it, but you can't park there. People do park in front of that driveway because everyone understands that it's not a driveway. And lastly, there is room at the top of that ramp for wheelchairs to go back and forth without an issue. And the corner, of course, has the standard ADA compliant sidewalk. So with that, I would urge the commission to uphold the staff recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak in support of the zoning docket matter? Please state your name and address for the record.
Sam Landry, 4526 Camp Street. I live about 3 blocks straight back from this photograph. So I frequented the coffee shop and I support this type of business. Obviously, it's a unique and indigenous business, and I think it's a positive for the neighborhood and doesn't really put much stress on the neighborhood because of its size. Also, across the street to the right, there's a park. So I think that actually makes it easy for parking not to become a problem, because there's adequate parking around there. It's not so dense with residents. And that's to say contrast 3 blocks behind where you're on Magazine Street and there's much more density of businesses and residents. So anyway, I think that what's proposed here is well accommodated by the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any other speakers in support? If not, we'll move to opposition. Robert Swan.
My name is Robert Swan. I live at 4849 Laurel, the other end of the block. Very basic problem with it is spot zoning in itself. It has been spot zoned. That's the only reason the coffee shop is there. The plea has been made that the operator is a wonderful person. The operator is a wonderful person. She does a darn good job. She can walk out 2 days from now and it'll remain a standard restaurant. It isn't tied to the operator, it's tied to the property. She does a good job as a specialty restaurant. The point has been made that it didn't impact the neighborhood very bad. That's because come time you leave in the morning, you go to work. There's some people getting their coffee. They close at 5, you come home, they have left. Now we want to do night business. You come home, you may find a parking spot, you may not. I have a driveway. I'm lucky. I don't worry about it. I take off somebody's front end if they park too close to my driveway, it's okay. I don't they have driveway. Anyway, I think it's a spot zoning that doesn't deserve to be re-spot zoned again. If you want to be a standard restaurant, take your business to Magazine Street. Thank you.
Staff, is this a spot zoning?
But this is a conditional use.
And it's not a zoning change, it's just granting them an additional entitlement to use the property as a standard restaurant.
So for clarification, I mean, it is a business district, a neighborhood business district, right, already, with various permitted uses and various other uses that are allowed under condition.
Yes.
Any other questions, commissioners? Next speaker, John Howell.
Thank you. I'm John Howell. I live at 4859 Laurel Street, yard 70115, about 4 doors down from the building you see there. And I want to be clear that to date I have supported everything that's gone on at 4877 Laurel Street. The structure you see there is a far cry from where the owners started when they began their renovation. And the Cherry Espresso owner has done a great job with the business that she's built there. And I support the concept that she proposes for evening dining, where she has told us that it would be for catered to early evening dining, or wine selection. What I'm concerned about here is a change that would allow a subsequent occupant to change that business model to something with late hours and extended alcohol sales. We have Ritz Bar across the block, across the Wisner Playground. We've got F&M Patio Bar. We've got Le Bon Temps Roulette over on Magazine Street. There are already enough full-blown bars to provide an occasional boisterous evening. I'm not concerned about that with the present owner, but as someone said a while ago, a zoning change is forever. And understand this is not a zoning change, but if it is a change that would remain with the building permanently, I would ask the commissioners to protect our neighborhood from further incursions by these type businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers here to speak in opposition for the zoning document? If not, the applicant will have time for rebuttal. Okay. So the applicant has chosen not to speak, right? Okay. So that closes the public hearing portion for the zoning document. Commissioner Brown.
I'd like to move approval per staff's recommendation and would like to ask that the commission will be in favor of, that's not in the city code, it's not something we can waive, the curb cut issue. So we can't really strike the proviso or
yes, theoretically, if DPW is determined that this is a superfluous curb cut, the city could actually elect to close it. So I would steer clear.
Okay. Move approval.
Second.
So it's been moved by Commissioner Brown for approval of the zoning document matter, second by Commissioner Steve. Is there any questions, comments, discussion on this motion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment in response to the opposition. I'm in favor of the motion. Familiar with the neighborhood, walk my dog in the dog park across the street. And I made the comment about zoning being forever. So, and I'm comforted by two things about this. This is a conditional use that allows only a restaurant. If the property were to change hands, the only thing that would be allowed is a restaurant that still complies with all the provisos, no other use. And the provisos do include limitations on, or actually the use standards do have limitations on hours. So I think it is a minimal additional adverse impact, if any at all, and appropriate to the neighborhood.
Any other commissioner with comments? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion, raise your hand. Opposed? The motion is carried. Zoning docket 04218.
Zoning docket 4218, request by University Development LLC for a conditional use to permit drive-through facilities at a specialty restaurant in an MU1 medium intensity mixed use district, an HUC historic urban corridor use restriction overlay district, and an EC enhancement corridor design overlay district on an undesignated lot on square 407 in the 4th Municipal District, bounded by South Claiborne Avenue, Washington Avenue, Toledano Street, and South D'Aurbigny Street. The municipal addresses are 2801, 2851 South Claiborne Avenue. The applicant proposes to demolish a portion of the existing structure and build a new standalone one-story, 2,616 square feet coffee shop. This restaurant would operate on a portion of a larger commercial development along a corridor characterized by a primarily auto-oriented commercial development pattern. Therefore, staff finds the proposal appropriate for its location and support the request. We recommend approval of zoning docket 4218 subject to 9 provisos.
Thank you so much. I didn't receive any cards, but is there a speaker to speak on the zoning docket?
Yes, sir. It's Charles Leroy with Empty Studio and the applicant.
Alright, please state your address for the record.
8200 Hampton Street, Suite 321, Suite Hampton. I'm sorry.
You continue.
Okay, yes, so the project looks to remove a portion of the building that's here now and put that little Starbucks in this location. I'm sorry. Yes. So it's going to be a standalone Starbucks in this location with a drive-through, which is why we're before the board, the drive-through portion. One alteration to the application that we did submit, we do want to include a bypass lane, which was a change from the submission you're looking at. But other than that, I'm here for answering questions.
All right, thank you so much. Any questions from any commissioner?
Bypass lane on which side?
Towards the existing building, so it would be further obstructed from view.
And the sports action, whatever that is, there on the end goes away?
Correct, yes, sir.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else here to speak in support? If not, is there anyone here to speak in opposition? Anyone to speak in opposition? If not, that closes the public hearing.
Make a motion. This is much different from the earlier one, which was a historic urban neighborhood district. This is a medium intensity mixed use district, and there's no opposition from the neighbors, so I'd like to move that we approve the staff recommendation and support the applicant.
Second. It's been moved by Commissioner Isaacson for approval, second by Commissioner Weberg. Is there any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Does that include the proposed change to add the bypass lane?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, I thought that was already included, but,
Yeah, and the applicant actually mentioned that to me on the phone just yesterday. It was actually the originally submitted plans, which was subsequently removed during the review. But it shouldn't
I just
enable
want to clarify for the record that the motion included
the change.
so that when they submit those plans, we can say that they're.
I mean, that doesn't cause you problems?
No, it won't.
Yeah, then, my motion includes that we approve both staff report and the resubmitted plans that include a bypass lane for approval. Is that clear?
And seconded by Commissioner Weber. All in favor of that motion, please state by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is carried. Zoning docket 48318.
This is zoning docket, 4318, which is a request for a conditional use to permit a neighborhood commercial establishment for a specialty restaurant in HURD2 Historic Urban Two-Family Residential District, Square 161, Park Lot 16 or Lot 16 in the 6th Municipal District. The municipal addresses are 938 through 940 Louisiana Avenue and 3406 Constant Street. So this is a property you might recall from a couple meetings ago. I think in December we had a zoning change application for this former corner commercial property to rezone it to HUB1A. The development application was specific to an ice cream parlor. The city council denied that application but submitted this alternative motion, which is to use the neighborhood commercial designation under the residential zoning to allow it to be operated as a neighborhood commercial establishment. Zoning and the use is very narrowly tailored to an ice cream parlor or other things that fall within that neighborhood commercial establishment designation with limited hours of operation and other pretty strict regulations. And so the City Planning Commission staff recommends approval subject to the provisos in your staff report.
Thank you so much. First speaker Reginald. I think I'm Reginald Cannon. All right, please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Reginald Commodore. I live at 3406 Constant Street.
And you've also been seated time as well, so you can speak for a period of 4 minutes. Also, please let the record show that Commissioner Brown has recused herself.
All right. My name is Reginald Commodore. My property is at the corner of Louisiana and Constant, and for many years it served as the local neighborhood grocery store. For many years, Patel's Grocery. Right now, that corner store is vacant and has sat vacant since the grocery store left the neighborhood. And so, how did this building fall into decline in disuse? When the neighborhood grocery store left, the building lost its commercial zoning status. And the building fell in decline and stayed there due to being rezoned, which limited its use and purpose. So what I'm proposing to do for this property is to protect and preserve it. I'm just not looking at the here and now, I'm looking at decades down the road to come. First, I need to protect this historic building from future deterioration by means of renovating. For the past 50 years, this place has sat vacant and empty, and that has to change. But I have to do more than just renovate. I need to restore with purpose and flexibility. And so without purpose and flexibility, we risk losing a part of New Orleans' history and heritage. So actually, what this building needs is adaptive reuse. The adaptive reuse will allow funds generated to be poured back into the building, thus keeping the building in a perpetual state of repair. So that is why I'm requesting a conditional use for a specialty restaurant. The adaptive reuse permitted and the conditional use will safeguard against future decline. You have to understand that this building was built for use as a corner store. There's a reason why these types of buildings were built on the corners and not in the middle of the block. It's corner design defined its purpose. Now CPC, along with City Council have been tasked with preserving a lot of New Orleans history and heritage. This building's history is more than just its architecture. It's its use and its intended use and its purpose, and we should fight to preserve that as well. But there are many benefits to allowing a conditional use for a specialty restaurant at this location, but I'll highlight just a few. First, it will put more eyes in the neighborhood to help protect it. Having a small business will encourage people to be more active in their neighborhood and discourage crime. A safer neighborhood can go a long way with relieving a lot of NOPD man hours that should be used and spent responding to more dangerous crimes. Second, a corner neighborhood store helps young and old stay active and independent, especially for many seniors who are no longer able to drive, or young people who haven't learned to drive yet. Having a walkable neighborhood is vital. We tech jargon, and what we use is used for wireless devices. The more devices you have connected into the mesh, the stronger the network is. And so that same concept can be applied to a lot of these neighborhoods. So in the case of the commercial district, reviving these corner store type buildings is how we make the neighborhood stronger. Also, job creation. Business creates more business, which creates more funds for capital, much needed capital improvements, better schools, etc. I've lived in this neighborhood for over 12 years. The neighborhood is getting more than a prudent owner who knows the neighborhood, and particularly this building. I'm not somebody who just flew down here and for a business opportunity. I put my own capital, my own resources, and I've taken the necessary prudent steps personally and financially to make sure this building and this business thrives for many years to come. So what am I really asking for? To some, it may appear something new, but the truth is this building was built for commerce. The truth is this building was a site of a business for decades. My time's up.
Yes,
right.
thank you. We can answer in 4 minutes. Is there any?
So just for clarity, because this looks pretty new, would this just be an ice cream pole? Just another
Is there anyone else to speak in support? If not, we'll move to the opposition. First up, John Minzer.
To address you, I live at 3426 Constant Street, 4 blocks, 4 houses down in that photograph from the subject property. There's an expression that all politics is local. Well, all zoning issues are certainly local as well. I'd like to address the staff report in favor of this conditional use. They looked at it from a generic point of view. I think it takes a neighbor to look at it from a strictly local point of view. I've been in the neighborhood 15 years, from before Katrina. This store is 1 block away from Magazine Street. What we saw with the revitalization of the Magazine Street corridor is that gradually our parking began co-opted as the overflow parking on Magazine Street. It started small, but then it built up, and what has happened today is that parking is quite a challenge. Most of the houses have no off-street parking, so it's always a scramble to see if you can find a parking spot. This would exacerbate an already terrible situation. The neighborhood is under stress today. Mr. Commodore gave you some very good reasons in generic, but he bought the property based on what was permitted at the time, and he paid a value for the property based on that. His economic interest is really against the interest of the neighborhood, as you will see from the other speakers. The fact that there's so many people against this shows why we are so vehement in opposing this, because we simply can't park. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next speaker is Cynthia Samuel.
Sorry, I'm so short, but
we can hear you. Just go ahead and talk.
it's going to be okay.
Yes.
Can you hear me? My name is Cynthia Samuel. I live at 943 Louisiana Avenue, directly across Louisiana from this subject property. I'm a retired law professor, so I'm going to talk about the law. The applicant's request for conditional use zoning is in contravention of zoning code section 4.3.a, which requires consideration of, quote, the public need for the particular use at the particular location. This means the owner's need is not relevant, only the public's need. Need is an objective standard denoting a deficit or a shortage. The standard is completely different from showing desiring, preferring, or wanting. These are subjective standards. They can't be disproven. They are not the same as need. There is no need for a specialty restaurant in the particular location for some of the reasons that were just given. The nearby Magazine Street area is teeming with restaurants. Within the immediate proximity and easy walking distance are 23 restaurants with all kinds of takeouts and various specialties, prices, and fare. There is no need for a restaurant in the residentially zoned area where this place is. The owner might want it, but that is not the same as proving public need. Conditional use zoning is a permanent change of zoning, and that it will follow the property into the hands of a new owner, and the property will not automatically revert to residential zoning in the event commercial use ceases, unlike a non-conforming use, which is deemed abandoned. This has a procedure for the neighbors going to the city council to get them to revoke the conditional use. That's putting the onus on the neighbors, unlike the non-conforming use. It is therefore essential that conditional use not be granted as a consolation prize for the owner who failed to get full commercial zoning, or on the representation that there has been a compromise. There's been no compromise. Conditional use ought to be granted only if the owner satisfies the legal requirements of the zoning code.
Thank you, Ms. Samuel. Next speaker, Harry and Sherry.
I'm Harry McSherry. I live at 3435 Constant Street. I recall one of the speakers got up and talked about I think the integrity of the individual who's going to open the restaurant. And I want to talk about that here because what we have is a failure to comply by Mr. Commodore. He has gone through the B&B registration where he only registered for one B&B. He has 3 B&Bs in that very building there, which also take up the parking. They caught him on the one, he had to go back, and he registered the second. We went to him, we said, Mr. Commodore, you have 3 B&Bs. You need to register the other one, do something about it. I do not. He said, absolutely, this is an office. We've called the zoning, they've gone out and looked at it. We have photos as of yesterday that he is operating that third area as a B&B. So he hasn't been honest about that. But he also told you that he's been a resident for 12 years because he's taken homestead exemption for the past 12 years, okay? Let me read some of the residences where he and his wife have lived over that 12-year period. 322 Orton Hall, Pullman, Washington. He has Washington license tags on his car. 2725 Northeast 75th Street, Seattle, Washington. They just sold that house in 2016. 12325 28th Avenue Northeast, Apartment C, Seattle, Washington. The only one, 938 940 Louisiana Avenue, because he's getting homestead exemption for that 12 years. 34624th Place, Southwest, Fedway, Washington. They put that as the mailing address each and every time. 1591 Dexter Lake Drive, that's a address for his wife, Mrs. Commodore, displayed on Street, New Orleans. These are residences that he and his wife listed when he's claiming homestead exemption at the property on Constance and on Louisiana Avenue. And then 6617 St.
Time.
He was a student for 4 years in Seattle.
Eleanor Brown.
My name is Eleanor Brown. I live at 1001 Louisiana Avenue, directly cat-a-corner from the subject property. The applicant has been seeking to bootstrap his residential property to a commercially valued property by co-opting the historic corner store facade. But the ordinance, the zoning ordinance, requires historic commercial establishments to be compatible with the surrounding neighborhoods. The surrounding neighborhoods have decided that the commercial use of these historic buildings is not compatible with their residential life. The facades have been preserved with residences. There are 42 surviving historic corner stores on Constance, Laurel, and Camp Streets from Jackson to Henry Clay. Every one of these 42 surviving structures to the commercial use of decades ago. A conditional use zoning of this structure will be an aberration in the surrounding neighborhood with future unknowns. We will get a pig and a poke. The expectations that we relied upon in the zoning ordinance for our residential quality of life will be destroyed, resulting in further parking shortage, noise, trash, and an invitation to crime. Commission members, I was not aware that there are no photos allowed, and I took photographic evidence of the 42 historic structures in the area I cited to verify what I'm telling you. I respectfully ask permission to give these photographs to the commission members.
Thank you. That concludes your time. Is there a motion by the commissioner?
To get the photographs?
I respectfully ask permission.
Yeah, I move that we look at the photographs.
Okay.
It's been moved, Commissioner Isaacson, that we suspend the rules to accept the photographs from the speakers, and seconded by Commissioner Stevens. All in favor of the motion, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Betsy Stout. Next speaker, Revolving Pigment.
City Planning Commissioners. I'm Debbie Pigman, President of the Fallbrook Delachaux Neighborhood Association. Our neighborhood runs from Louisiana to Peniston, Magazine to Chapatoulas, so this falls within our neighborhood. Today I would like to speak against Mr. Reginald Commodore's request for a conditional use for a specialty restaurant for his property at 938, 940 Louisiana and 3406 Constance Street. Although he said in his neighborhood participation meeting back in September 14, 2017, that he wanted to change the zoning, which has been alluded to here, so he could use the building as an ice cream parlor, he in fact did not need this zoning change to have the ice cream parlor in that location. He wanted this change so that his temporary short-term rentals would become commercial short-term rentals, which could be rented any or all nights of the year. The ice cream parlor was a red herring. You turned Mr. Commodore down for the zoning change, and he appealed to the city council, which also turned him down. The Fallbrook Association is not in favor of granting conditional use for the proposed ice cream parlor. We have several concerns. Firstly, the future of the property. The City Planning Commission, if you grant a conditional use for the specialty restaurant, this will go with the property and it will make it much more attractive for sale. He has tried to sell this in the past but has not been able to, so this would be an incentive for him. The new owner can then decide what type of conditional specialty restaurant within that change, and it may not be an ice cream parlor, which is being requested today. Secondly, a lack of parking in the area, which occurred from my neighbors. It's a very busy area and off Magazine Street, so there is a lot of parking space that's taken up during the day and into the evening also. Also, thirdly, traffic. Okay, increased traffic would be an outcome of this, with more people going in and out of this particular location. Also, fourthly, increased noise and also trash, which would be generated by the ice cream parlor. The Fallbrook Delachaux Neighborhood Association would like to preserve the residential character of our neighborhood.
Thank
and
you
this
so much.
means no ice cream parlor. Thank you for your attention.
Well, the last call I have is Kathleen Vavra.
Good afternoon. My name is Kathleen Baber, and I live at 936 Louisiana Avenue, which is directly next door on Louisiana to this property. Before I get started on exactly what I'm going to be speaking about, I want to point out that Mr. Commodore has been adamant that he is not the owner of this property, that Managing Change LLC is. However, on his application, there is not one single mention of Managing Change LLC. So to begin with, I don't know how legal this is. That's a matter for the legal department. What I really want to speak about is he has said that the neighborhood is all in support of this ice cream parlor. He has presented a petition which has almost 100 signatures on it, and I have gone through the petition and I have marked in red where the addresses are.
We can accept.
Okay. I would like to ask if you would please take.
Let me make a comment, which is you can speak in your testimony to what's in there, which is what I would suggest you do rather than, because we're not supposed to take material.
Okay. Okay. They're all scattered out all over this map, okay? In addition, the last 3 pages are addresses that don't even fit on this map. So that's not the neighborhood that's in support. We have made a petition opposing the granting of this conditional use, and I had to blow up the map so I could get it a little more clear. But we have 63 signatures, all here, right in this neighborhood, of people that do not want this ice cream parlor in our neighborhood.
Thank you so much. That ends your time. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition for the zoning docket matter? Are there any other speakers? If not, the applicant would now have time for rebuttal. You have a total of 4 minutes, Mr. Commodore.
First things first, parking. If you look at the city staff report, this is a pre-World War II neighborhood. It was never intended for automobiles, yet we have inventions, and so we have automobiles. But if anyone wants to come at 2 a.m. in the morning, when businesses on Magazine Street are clearly closed, there's no parking, because for each, in this neighborhood, there's shotgun doubles. Each double can, at minimum, produce 1 car. And so that's as far as parking is concerned. Plus, they're doing construction on the street, which is not going to be done probably for another couple of years. This isn't a red herring, this isn't a ruse. I've spent the last 2 years working with an architect firm. I've spent money behind plans for an ice cream parlor. I'm not asking for any local or government funds. I'm self-funding the whole thing. This isn't the short game, it's the long game. I've been here for anything. And as far as, I don't even know why this is even up. You guys have asked me to come back through this process. The first time it was looked at possible of trying to get commercial zoning for an Airbnb. My whole thing is I have permits for Airbnbs. I got a second one, so they would stop calling the city on me. I just had an inspection from the city to come out. This was about 2 weeks ago. They found nothing. You guys can pull the report from upstairs with that department. So if you guys have any questions or any concerns, I know I have a couple questions on some of the provisos that were in there.
So you have 2 more minutes and you're in your time?
Yeah, that's it.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, any comments, concerns from any commissioners or the speaker, for the applicant? If not, that closes the public hearing portion for this zoning docket matter.
I have a question for staff, which is, in the block of Louisiana Avenue between Magazine and Constance, once you leave Magazine Street, is it all residential zoning on Louisiana leading up to the corner of Constance?
It's mostly residential. So there is another HUB 1A, or I don't want to say another, but there is an HUB 1A district
about a block away on, I believe, Constance and Laurel. And you'll see scattered different zoning districts throughout the neighborhood, but it is largely residential between Magazine and Shop Tours.
Okay, and in the one block from Magazine to Constance, the properties fronting on Louisiana, after you get away from Magazine, are those all residential?
Yes.
The public hearing portion is closed.
For clarity, Commissioner, there's GNR Automotive Repair that's on the corner of Louisiana and I believe Constance, and then across the street there's Cafe at Chapel Ave.
Yeah, well, Chapel Ave is on Laurel.
It faces Louisiana.
So, yeah, no, I'm just, I mean, I didn't mean to open up, I just, in the one block from Magazine to Constance, I'm just looking at Google Maps and I'm seeing properties that from on Louisiana. And then this property is the first one on the riverside of Constance in the next block. And I just wanted to know if there were any residential, if there were any commercial, if they were all residential from Magazine to Constance before you cross Constance to get to this property, other than the ones fronting on Magazine, which is it's all residential. Just that one block. That's all I was wondering about. But I'll withdraw it. It's probably a red herring anyway. I'm going to make a motion to get us started since fidgeting, I think because this is a really difficult, not going with staff, which we rarely do. And so the basis for my motion is that mostly to Ms. Samuel's point about need, I'm not as much convinced that that's a purely legal argument, but it is supposed to take into consideration the need of the neighborhood, and I'm looking at how close it is to Magazine Street, and so I am wondering, does the neighborhood, I understand the usefulness of neighborhood businesses, drawing people out, having people walk, foot traffic, eyes on the street. I think all those are very valid for exactly this zoning classification. But given how close it is to Magazine Street, I'm not convinced that the neighborhood needs it or it's a benefit to the neighborhood. So my motion is for denial. With some reluctance, because I do think it's very close.
Is there a second to Commissioner Steve's motion?
I'll second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Steve for denial for the zoning document matters, second by Commissioner Warren. Is there any other discussion by any other commissioners or comments on the motion?
I'd love to consent some discussion because I'd love to hear some thoughts on this.
This is clearly a strong residential neighborhood, and not so much the parking for me, because I really don't know the future of cars. Hopefully there will be fewer. But it is a strong residential neighborhood, and there isn't a need for more, it complies with historical use and all that. However, the evolution of the neighborhood, and I don't see the residential areas, there's a strong artery of neighborhood commercial.
Any other discussion? Commissioner Hughes?
I'm inclined to vote against the motion. This gentleman has come before us before, and we had a very lengthy discussion about this particular property and his intended use. And it seems as though he has done what this commission requested him to do. Looking at the provisos, I'm inclined to vote against the motion.
call the question. All in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Those in voting against the majority. So, next zoning docket matter 4418.
The next item is zoning docket 4418 for a property located at 4 sale of alcoholic beverages in HUB1 Detroit Urban Neighborhood Business District. The applicant has requested the conditional use in order to convert an operating specialty restaurant into a standard restaurant. The staff finds the proposed use of a standard restaurant is consistent with the purpose and intent of the HUB1 Neighborhood Business District regulations and is consistent with the master plan. The proposed use satisfies all standards specifically applicable to the proposed standard restaurant. The recommended provisos will mitigate any potential negative impacts associated with the operation of a standard restaurant at this site. Therefore, the staff recommends approval of zoning docket 4418.
Thank you. First speaker, Nicole Weber.
Good afternoon. This is a current restaurant, La Boulangerie. You may be familiar with. They sell specialty full meals and specialty French items. It's on the corner, and once the photo comes up, you might recognize it. So this is an existing restaurant. They do not wish to change anything about the restaurant. They merely are trying to address questions from customers, of which we have 101 letters of support. 75 of those are from direct uptown neighbors, and 25 are from Orleans Parish residents, requesting that the restaurant be able to sell wine with food. In order to do that, that's why we have to ask for the request to become a standard restaurant versus a specialty restaurant. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Ashley Davis.
Hi, my name is Ashley Davis. I live at 4311 Toulouse Street, and I'm in support of the motion of La Boulangerie selling alcohol. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else speaking in support for the zoning docket matter? If not, we'll move to opposition. Bruce Crutcher. Pecker.
How y'all doing again? Yeah, my big objection, we live on Janet Street, almost directly in the backyard of this place. And I understand they want to expand it. It's going to be in the patio.
I don't see that. My understanding is that the footprint of the building is not changing at all.
Okay, well, if you look down magazine toward Napoleon, you see that all these places that started out, I got bawled out by somebody because it's a restaurant, not a bar. Well, they turn out to be, start out as restaurants, but they end up being bars. Happy hour, everything on there. You pass by some of these places, and you can't even see the restaurant, you see the bar. But that's not, I mean, I guess I'm wrong in that. And probably expanding this, turning Cadiz is a small street. I mean, y'all trying to go down there, you're really going to get, that's a problem. Parking's an issue. Evening hours is going to be an issue. I think it's, I just think that it's, expansion is not a good idea. Sometimes I think zoning ought to be left alone. You don't have to always do something. We got a retail place right next door to it, and I think that it's, you know, and like everybody else said before, if somebody would move out, they moved before, they worked down the block, they moved down, you know, who's going to be in there? Is it going to be a, a bar or a Burger King or something? I just think it's, I oppose it, and I just think that it's not my objection for the record. Thank you very much.
Just to make sure, just asking a question, it says the applicant is not proposing any interior or exterior expansion or modifications. That stands correct?
No, I understand that it's the
I'm asking staff, not you, sir.
Yes, sir, that's my understanding.
Thank you.
So the backyard's not going to be used at all? The back dining area?
Sir, I'm sorry, that ends your time.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else speaking in opposition for the zoning docket matter? If not, the applicant now has time for rebuttal.
I just want to clarify that as you see the business today, if you walk in there right now, it will remain the same. They are not going to be changing the interior. There will not be a holding bar. It is merely for them to have the ability to sell wine with food. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Weber. And now closes the public hearing portion for the zoning docket matter. Are there any comments or questions by any commissioner?
I'll move to approve staff recommendation.
It's been moved by Commissioner Isaacson to take such staff report for approval, second by Commissioner Brown. Is there any discussion on that motion? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion, state by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? If not, the motion carries. Subdivision docket 01318.
Subdivision docket 01318 is a request by Right Homes LLC to re-subdivide lots 1 and 2 into proposed lots 1A and 2A on Square 687, 6th Municipal District, bounded by South Claiborne Avenue, Robert Street, Toulouse Street, and Sognette Street. The municipal addresses are 5024 South Claiborne Avenue and 2841 Sognette Street. The proposal would reconfigure the existing 2 lots, which currently an existing residential dwelling in the currently existing rear yard of the subject site. The proposed re-subdivision is classified as a Policy B subdivision. Because this application is not compliant with the 3 criteria of Policy B, the proposal must be considered by the City Planning Commission. Existing lots 1 and 2, which make up the development site for a single-family dwelling, are each independently compliant with the minimum lot size requirements for the district. While proposed lot 2A would be compliant with these requirements, lot 1A would be deficient in both lot depth and lot area. The request does not meet the criteria for a re-subdivision under Policy B and does not constitute an improvement of the original plat. The proposed subdivision would create a substandard lot of record, and the lot configuration in the proposed subdivision is not consistent with the neighborhood norm. Based on this, the staff recommends denial of subdivision docket 01318. However, the applicant, who is out of town and unable to make today's hearing, is requesting deferral to a subsequent meeting.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else? Is there anyone to speak in support of this zoning docket matter? Is there anyone to speak in opposition for this zoning docket matter?
Can I ask a question? Is there anything that you're waiting for the applicant or whatever that would change things?
No.
It seems cut and dry. I move we follow staff recommendations tonight. Second. Well, I don't know. Let's have some discussion. Maybe we're a little too hasty. Is there any reason to keep putting this off?
Staff has fully evaluated the request, and there are no expected changes. I think he just wanted to be here to try to argue.
Well, unfortunately, we should have a precedent with I hold off for a second. I'll give anybody else.
So you withdraw your motion. There was a second by Commissioner Weaver. So your motion is on the table, so you have to withdraw your motion.
I'll withdraw it to see if anybody feels that we need that. And then hear any discussion.
I'm going to move to defer today, seeing as how there might not be able to, we may not be able to, or she may not be able to provide any further information that would change my mind as it stands after reading staff report, but just to be flexible as we look for 2 meetings. Is that what we're looking at, or one? Just one?
One meeting should
be the first meeting in April.
So I'm going to second that, but with the comment that the applicant better come back with something really, really convincing, because a 30 by 60 lot in the back of that existing house just seems like a really terrible idea to me. But to be considered consistent since we, in our very first one, we had an absentee. And we don't have neighbors who we're trying to, the opposition we're trying to accommodate, so I do think a deferral is in order, but only out of politeness, because this really seems like a bad idea.
Thank you, Commissioner Steve. We have a motion by Commissioner Brown for deferral to the first meeting of April, second by Commissioner Steve. Is there any further discussion on this motion? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor for the deferral to the first meeting of April, state by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion is carried. Subdivision docket 01518.
Subdivision docket 01518 is a request by Aubrey St. Bernard LLC to re-subdivide lots 4 and 5 and to propose lots 4A, 4B, and 5A on square 1189 in the 3rd Municipal District, bounded by Aubrey Street, North Rocheblave Street, and St. Bernard Avenue. The municipal addresses are 2312, 2320 St. Bernard Avenue and 2323-2327 Aubrey Street. The proposal would create a new lot of record that fronts on St. Bernard Avenue by reconfiguring portions of the existing 2 lots, lots 4 and lot 5. Currently, there are 3 single-family homes on the 2 existing lots, and the subdivision proposal would separate each residence onto its own lot of record. Since the proposed subdivision involves the separation of one existing main use onto 2 separate parcels, it is to be reviewed under Policy E of the subdivision regulations. The request meets most of the criteria for a re-subdivision request under Policy E and achieves the overall intent of the subdivision regulations and is consistent with the master plan. Staff recommends tentative approval.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry, I could barely think out the card. Is it Tracy? Tracy? Tracy Birch?
Yes. Hello, my name is Tracy Birch. Address is 3305 St. Anne Street, New Orleans. I'm here simply to speak on behalf of the applicants for the subdivision request.
Okay. You want to speak for them, or?
Just to answer any questions you might have.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. I have another call for Rebecca.
I'm on the next one.
Oh, sorry. Is there anyone else to speak in support or opposition? If not, that closes the public hearing portion for this zoning docket matter. Any discussions, motions, or comments from any commissioner?
Motion to approve staff recommendation.
Is there a second? It's been moved by Commissioner Weaver, second by Commissioner Brown, for accepting staff's report for tentative approval. Is there any discussion on that motion? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor, please state by saying aye. 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 Opposed? The motion is carried. Please let the record show that Commissioner Isaacson was not in for that vote.
Mr. Chair. The City Planning Commission was directed by City Council Motion M17440 to conduct an environmental study contemplating limiting certain types of developments or uses on contaminated sites to ensure that future uses will not negatively impact surrounding residents and citizens. The motion also directed the CPC to include an inventory of waste disposal, waste incineration, or other known sites where environmental toxins exceed federally mandated standards. The City Planning Commission used the City Council motion as a guide for the study but expanded the scope to contemplate the existing realm of environmental regulations, including state, regional, and federally mandated requirements. The study also outlined several federal and state brownfields programs in order to understand how the City of New Orleans could leverage these resources to remediate potentially contaminated sites. Finally, the City Planning Commission has provided a review of best practices from other communities to understand how local governments regulate and revitalize both former landfill sites as well as other brownfields such as former manufacturing sites. Together, the endeavors of this study should point towards implementable policy actions to both facilitate the use of available resources to improve environmental conditions and to promote appropriate reuse of sites with known environmental conditions. The scope of work includes the identification of potential brownfield sites with the goal of raising public awareness of environmental conditions of land in New Orleans. The final goal of the study was to provide recommendations on program development to facilitate the use of available resources and to improve environmental conditions geared to residents as well as developers. Today's presentation summarizes the following: background, a history of New Orleans waste disposal practices, Agriculture Street landfill site history, regulatory framework, best practices, inventory of landfills, dumps, and incinerators, key findings and recommendations. New Orleans has had a long and changing land use history accompanied by an evolving system of waste disposal. In the 19th century, garbage disposal included a process of hauling trash to boats on the Mississippi River, taken downriver and dumped into the river, dispersing throughout southeast Louisiana. In the early 20th century, open dumps were created at the edge of developed parts of the city. Scavengers picked over items that retained some value. Fire was used to help control quantities, flies, and rats. For a time, hogs were allowed to feed at dumps to reduce waste. Garbage was also used as fill. In 1911, Mayor Martin Berman read from a Public Works Commission special report. Quote, "The city has been so successful in dumping refuse into old unused canals and swamplands that many low places filled with garbage have been converted into beautiful parks and fine avenues. This system has proven itself to be a very economical as well as beneficial means of getting rid of the refuse collected throughout the city, as it saves the enormous expense of filling in all these unused canals and swamplands, besides eliminating breeding places for mosquitoes." From 1909 to 1957, the Agriculture Street landfill was the city's primary landfill. Garbage was taken to transfer stations, loaded on train cars, and hauled by train to the landfill. After its initial closure, the landfill was reopened to accept hurricane debris, finally closing again in 1965. In the 1970s and 80s, much of the site was developed with housing and a school. From 1916 to the mid-1970s, incinerators were a primary and much touted method of waste disposal. From 1960 to 86, Old Gentilly landfill was the city's primary landfill for solid waste. It was reopened after Hurricane Katrina to accept construction and demolition debris and vegetative waste only. Currently, that is the city's only open landfill, and the city's solid waste goes to a regional landfill outside of New Orleans, outside of the city of New Orleans. This study was inspired by the Agriculture Street landfill Superfund site and a recent master plan amendment submission by the residents of Gordon Plaza subdivision. The adopted action items in the master plan, as seen in this table on the screen, are related to the identification, remediation, and redevelopment of contaminated sites and buildings and other areas with documented environmental justice issues. We hope this study serves as an action plan fulfilling these recommendations. This study aims to discover strategies and best practices in brownfield development, recognizing that cleaning up brownfields not only benefits in terms of environmental conditions, but also can help the city achieve other goals related to neighborhood revitalization and economic development.
Environmental regulations related to contaminated sites are governed through Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation and Liability Act, also known as CERCLA, and the Small Business Liability Relief and Brownfields Revitalization Act, commonly referred to as the Brownfields Law, which amended CERCLA. CERCLA established prohibitions on hazardous waste sites, provided for liability of parties responsible for hazardous waste, established a cleanup fund where no responsible party could be identified, and authorized the Environmental Protection Agency to pursue enforcement actions against parties responsible for contaminated sites. Under CERCLA, entities can be held strictly liable for cleanup of hazardous substances. Strict liability means that liability for contamination can be assigned solely on property ownership without regard to causation, culpability, or intent, and can be applied retroactively. The Brownfields law has made competitive grant opportunities available to eligible entities, including state and local governments, for brownfield assessment and cleanup, revolving loan funds, area-wide planning grants, environmental workforce development, and job training grants. The Louisiana Hazardous Waste Control Law establishes a framework for the regulation, monitoring, and control of the generation, transport, storage, and disposal of hazardous wastes. It also authorizes regulations for underground storage tanks. The Louisiana Inactive and Abandoned Hazardous Waste Site Law addresses scenarios in which the state directs the cleanup, closure, or post-closure of inactive and abandoned sites through the exercise of police powers and expenditure of public monies. At the local level, the City of New Orleans formerly had a Brownfields office which closed in 2012. The City of New Orleans once had a revolving loan fund granted by the EPA, which was most recently loaned for the remediation of the former Lindy Boggs Hospital. In researching best practices, the staff selected the following 5 cities for different reasons, including history of industrial use, known inventive planning practices, and regional balance. Staff researched and synopsized best practices in brownfields assessment, remediation, and general environmental hazard management, local organizational frameworks, and case studies on brownfields redevelopment projects in cities including Austin, Baltimore, Baton Rouge, New York, and Pittsburgh. All cities studied have established brownfield remediation programs and utilize available grants or provide incentives to help remediate contaminated property into usable land for recreation, housing, public service, or commerce. Notable practices by Austin and New York will be described on the following slides. The City of Austin's Brownfield program is managed under the Department of Resource Recovery, formerly known as the Sanitation Department. This office partners with other government agencies as well as community organizations to support the revitalization of brownfields as a way to return properties to the community as a green space or as a commercial, residential, or mixed-use development. The program uses collaborative strategies such as securing federal grant dollars from the EPA, providing zero to low interest remediation loans, and assisting with revitalization planning. Some notable practices in Austin include required soil sampling for commercial and multifamily developments on sites greater than an acre in size, annual free soil testing fair for residents known as the Soil Kitchen, maintenance inventory of known closed landfill sites, properties within the buffer of a closed landfill site that are required to register with the state of Texas and file written notice on the deed of record that the property contains a closed landfill. And the City of Austin recently remediated and redeveloped a brownfield site, which was formerly a power plant for public purposes, into the city's central library near downtown. And the before and after photos are shown on the slide. The City of New York's Brownfield program is managed by the Office of Environmental Remediation, created in 2008. The office was tasked to plan, establish, coordinate, and oversee city policy regarding the identification, investigation, remediation, and redevelopment of brownfields and protective of public health and the environment, as well as supportive of cities' economic development. Some of the office's notable programs include an E designation program, which is a zoning map designation that indicates the presence of an environmental requirement. The designation mandates environmental remediation to ensure environmental requirements have been met prior to any new development or new usage of the site. Properties that have been a gas station, dry cleaners, auto repair, and manufacturing businesses are examples of properties that might be designated with an E. The Office of Environmental Remediation also collaborates with the Department of City Planning, who has developed several strategic area plans to aid community-based organizations in revitalization work. Finally, the city also offers the Jump Start program for affordable and supportive housing developments. Eligible recipients receive assistance in enrolling in the state brownfield cleanup program and a $250,000 no-interest loan, which would be repayable following site remediation, construction, and occupancy. New York is also in the process of remediating and repurposing a former landfill site, the Fresh Kills landfill, into a large public park. The landfill, once one of the largest in the world, measures 2,200 acres in size. the city conducted an international design competition to foster the development of a master plan for Fresh Hills. The park is currently being built in phases, with the final phase to be completed in 2036, and the pictures on the side are of the Fresh Hills.
The study provided an inventory of the city's former landfills, open dumps, and incinerator sites, but this does not include an assessment of the current environmental conditions at each of these sites. Further study, including a Phase 2 environmental assessment for most of these areas, is necessary to evaluate their environmental conditions. This slide shows the location of the inventory landfill and dump sites, current and former industrial districts, and shows a correlation with low-income census tracts. There are opportunities for leveraging this information into funding opportunities to improve the areas where former noxious land uses were located. Staff has recently learned about a federal Opportunity Zone tax incentive program that is aimed at improving distressed areas. The Opportunity Zone program could provide an economic boost to these areas. The staff believes targeting these low-income neighborhoods where former policy decisions have resulted in this correlation would provide the city with an opportunity to incorporate an environmental justice path to remediate sites and find appropriate reuse. The map also identifies current and former industrial districts. Some notable concentrations of industrial zoning districts that were changed with the new CZO include the Lafitte Greenway Corridor, the lakeside of Chapultepec Street uptown, and the Marigny, industrial districts in the Marigny and Bywater. The study also notes that industrial uses in general may have left behind contamination of varying types and quantities, and this is why it's important to know a site's land use history, as it can indicate whether further environmental study is required prior to redevelopment. So some more key findings from the study are that New Orleans has a number of landfill, incinerator, and dump sites that should be further studied for appropriate reuse, taking into consideration future environmental assessments. The landfill, dump, and incinerator sites cited in this report contain a variety of future land use map and zoning district designations, though many are designated for parkland and natural open space. There are environmental conditions that may be present at sites based on their past land use or vehicle emissions. New Orleans formerly had a Brownfields program manager until 2012, but due to lack of resources, this position was discontinued. All other cities studied have long established Brownfields programs and managers. Many other cities also provide local tools and incentives for remediation and redevelopment. And so the city is not taking advantage of strategic partnerships. While the City of New Orleans has economic development organizations, the city lacks a Brownfields manager who can work with established organizations, property owners, and developers, focusing on the intersection between Brownfields remediation and economic development. Assessing and improving the city's environment will be an ongoing effort which requires multiple strategies. The following slides break down the recommendations of this study into 4 major categories. The first is land use policy and planning. The staff recommends that the city conduct area studies to systematically analyze the challenges related to multiple brownfield sites and incorporate site-specific assessment and cleanup into larger community revitalizations. The city should also take steps to modify the FLUM map designations and zoning classifications for appropriate reuse of sites with environmental conditions. The city should promote voluntary soil testing and consider soil testing requirements for certain areas proposed for residential and institutional use. The city should consider policies to prohibit residential or school uses on former landfill sites. The city should also identify additional opportunity sites for the master plan where related policies would be appropriate. In terms of brownfields management and revitalization, the staff recommends that the city designate brownfields personnel to collaborate with state and federal environmental agencies, secure sources of seed money, and manage resources. Locating such personnel in a charter department such as City Planning Commission is recommended, as it was found to be a common practice in other cities. The city should also perform outreach and educate property owners as well as the general public of the need to consider environmental conditions at each site. The city should focus on redevelopment of city-owned sites in need of cleanup and appropriate reuse. And finally, the city should ensure up-to-date reporting and stewardship of current resources and grants. Proper stewardship includes the submission of timely reports, annual performance and technical reports, data management, budget management, and compliance management. In terms of leveraging resources and grants, the city should obtain area-wide planning grants and assessment grants from EPA for areas with former industrial use. The city should obtain grants to provide workforce development in fields related to environmental assessment and cleanup. The city should consider creating a program of tax abatements or credits for site cleanups, which could be modeled after the existing restoration tax abatement, which the city currently administers. And finally, the city should consider reestablishing its revolving loan fund for environmental cleanup. The city should cultivate partnerships. They should assemble a team of committed partners, which may include businesses, organizations, community development corporations, philanthropic organizations, and other local governments to promote the redevelopment of brownfield sites. The city should work with the Regional Planning Commission, who has a well-established brownfields program. The city should work with the New Orleans Business Alliance to identify sites appropriate for reuse for economic development purposes. And finally, the city should take advantage of technical assistance available from Kansas State University and Louisiana State University Ag Center. The city should also partner with the Port of New Orleans and other entities performing area-wide planning and similar reuse planning efforts. In terms of education and outreach, the city should provide an inventory similar to that which was provided in the study of sites with known unremediated environmental conditions for public awareness. The city should advise property owners and developments on performing due diligence and on the need for environmental assessment, especially on sites that have a history of industrial use. And the city should participate in public events to raise public awareness of environmental issues and resources available. So that concludes vote on the study and forward this to the City Council. Once it's transmitted to the City Council, the staff will brief the new council and new administration on its recommendations and consider ways to implement these recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I want to commend staff on doing a marvelous job with this report and the information that's in it. Are there any other comments from any other commissioners?
Your study was, I guess, not narrow, but it was specific to former hazardous waste sites. Has a study been done, like, broader around the issue of other hazards that may be in the soil, like lead, and would that fall under maybe some potential grants that, if this office is established and sits under you, is there ways to broaden that and provide support to residents, because certain areas of the city, it isn't just lead.
I would say yes, that is considered a hazardous situation to have lead contamination in the soil. The city has actually tested, I think, a number of parks and remediated 11 for lead contamination. So that is something that the city looks at and was done through the Office of Environmental Affairs.
I guess we're talking public parks, but private developers are homes for residents to figure out ways and additional supports to help them remediate their particular sites, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely, and we would recommend, and the health department does have an initiative focusing around lead in soil contamination especially. We would like to promote that further because that could happen simply from vehicle emissions having settled into the soil over decades. So really anyone even a residential site should look into doing at least voluntary soil testing, especially if there are small children involved.
I just want to say thanks for doing this, and how long has it been since we had a Brownfield manager?
Since 2012, so it's been 6 years.
Yeah. And would it be a high priority to the public awareness of the hazardous sites? Is there, it may be in here, not read it, but is that a way to let, it seems like that would be a very high priority, just making public what you know about where hazardous sites are.
Yeah.
That would best be done through an office that would be set up.
We do think we need a Brownfield manager who could work on issues like this full time. And I did want to also give a shout out. I don't know if she signed up to speak on this particular study, but we have Rebecca from the RPC here, who has been very helpful to us, and she met with us twice, and really provided a lot of expertise. I think she did submit a card, but you had it for the last one.
Am I okay?
Yes.
So my name is Rebecca Oddie, and I'm the Brownfield Program Director at the Regional Planning Commission. And I wanted to say, first of all, great job on the report, but also I'm very excited that the Planning Commission is looking at revitalizing, rejuvenating the Brownfield program at the city. We used to work together very cooperatively when it was at the Mayor's Office of Environmental Affairs. To be honest, there are more brownfield sites in the city than one entity can apply for funding for. So often the city and RPC would apply at the same time, and we would, write support letters for each other. So we definitely see it as a partnership. A lot of the sites that we worked on, either the city would start it and RPC would come in because of the way the funding was set up, or vice versa. So it was very cooperative that way. And in the last omnibus bill that was passed last week, the Brownfield budget was actually doubled, from what I understand. So it's very timely that if the city can restart the Brownfield redevelopment office, I guess is what you called it, might be able to take advantage of that program. One thing I did want to note is that even though you haven't had a formal Brownfield program manager since 2012, the city does have 2 Brownfield Cleanup Revolving Loan Fund grants. And so you loan the money out, that money is repaid, it's program income, and then the city can use that for other Brownfield related activities. So the first one was loaned out, I think it was $350,000, I'm not sure of the loan amount. That was since repaid, and because there hasn't been a Brownfield manager, it's a little unclear where that money went, unless y'all were able to track it down. Yeah. So it was a little confusing on that, and then and now they've loaned the money to St. Margaret's Foundation for the cleanup of the Lindy Boggs Medical Center site, which was completed last fall. So that money will also be paid back. So there are certain reporting requirements that go along with that funding that, to be honest, haven't been done, and that money has really gone underutilized. So it would be great to have a Brownfield department again at the city to be able to track that funding and be able to utilize it.
Thank you so much for your comments. Any other comments from the other commissioner?
I have a question, but in New York, the Department of Resource Recovery, oh no, that was in Austin, huh? Is that was the former Department of Sanitation, it's not the Brownfield's office, right?
So the Department of Resource Recovery is basically their sanitation department. It's much larger than the sanitation department of the city of New Orleans, but their Brownfield's office is a subsection of their Department of Sanitation.
Yeah, I just really like renaming it that because it's so much broader and more positive. And
they also have a zero waste policy goal.
We might just add to that we do believe that a Brownfield program or team when it's, for example, the Office of Resilience and Sustainability, we're not sure what its future is going to be at this point with the change of administration.
I would like the pen towel exhibit out like that. Would you like to add anything to that? To the
I was
study?
just going to respond to Commissioner Lund's comment that the study itself was directed specifically, and I'll put Commissioner Hankins. It was directed specifically to former waste disposal sites because of the, it was motivated by the input from the residents of the Agriculture Street area. And in talking with the council member who was interested in putting some land use provisions into the master plan, we suggested doing a study instead, looking a little bit broader, instead of just Agriculture Street, look citywide. And I think to your point, the brownfields, the issue of brownfields came out of a study that was really looked at how can we as planners look at land use as a way of providing a layer of protection to avoid Agriculture Street situations, but also to provide that kind of public information. In looking at that specific question, we dug into the brownfield issue and recognized what a missed opportunity it was meant to the city, and possibly a way to address a lot of the issues that have come up today.
So, entertain a motion to accept the staff's report. It's been moved by Commissioner Hughes, second by Commissioner Lunt, to accept staff report and to move it forward to City Council. Any questions or comments on that motion? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion is approved. Moving on to other matters, we have consideration for deferring the city's planning commission evaluation of unclassified personnel to June 12th, 2008, to the June 12th, 2018 meeting. Can I get that in the form of a motion?
Can I just place on it? It's also the annual meeting. We issued a revised agenda to clarify that it's also the annual meeting.
Okay. It's been moved in second. All in favor of the motion? Aye. Any opposed? The motion is carried. Adoption of the minutes for March 13th, 2018. It's been moved by Commissioner Lunt. Is there a second? There's a second. All in favor of the motion? State by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion is carried. Are there any committee reports? If not, I know we have at least one announcement. We have a new commissioner. We almost have all our commissioners here, so I'll give her a moment.
Hi, my name is Lona Edwards-Hankins. For the last 10 years, I've managed the Recovery School District construction program. I'm from New Orleans, live right around the corner from the Shoetown / now Subway. Happy to serve.
All right, thank you so much. Any other comments? All right, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.